I'm Forrest Shaw, and I've got a problem. How is everybody doing? Hopefully well. If you aren't doing well, it will get better. It will. And then it might get worse again. Then it'll get better again. It's a cycle. Thanks to everybody that has been with me from the start. I appreciate you as always. And thank you to everybody that is new, that is listening or watching. Subscribe if you haven't. If you're just checking this out for the first time, hit a little subscribe, follow button, give me a rate, give me a comment. People are commenting more. I appreciate that. It does help, especially on YouTube. And if you feel like donating to the podcast, go to forrestshaw.net, click on the podcast, and right there you'll see a link. It says, I've got a problem donation. You do not have to donate. But if you do, it will go towards the show, and I appreciate it. While you're on my website, check out my upcoming shows. Let me think about, this week, October 17th in LaGrange, Texas. Very small area, but if you're listening from LaGrange, come out. It's a place called Max Stacks. That one's actually selling really well. That might sell out. Then I'll be in Bastrop, Texas on October 18th, which is pretty close there as well. October 22nd, Austin, Texas, at the Cap City Comedy Club in the Red Room. Just one show there. Please come out to that. And then October 26th, Plano, Texas, Mic Drop Comedy. And then I'll be in Florida, October 29th through November 2nd at McCurdy's Theater in Sarasota, Florida. November 6th or 8th, the Comedy Inn in Miami. November 12th and 13th, Fort Myers, Florida, Snappers. The 14th and 15th, Sad Man Comedy Cafe in Boca. November 19th through the 22nd, I'll be in Comedy Key West. And then after that, I've got a bunch of dates I got to put on my website, but I'm going to be back in Miami. I'm going to be in Stuart, Florida. I'm going to be in Tampa again. I'm doing the Other Side Splitters in Wesley Chapel. It's a little bit north of Tampa, actually. And I've got some other dates, Winter Haven, and so forth. I'll put all those up on my website shortly. They should be on there. Go to forrestshaw.net. And I think I'm going to bring back, by the way, my lighting is really dark today. I just noticed on one side, but whatever. It's fine. It's fine. You can see me. I think I'm going to bring back, I don't have any segments at the beginning. I was doing like comments and telephone calls and stuff like that. Nobody was calling in. Maybe when the podcast gets a little bit bigger, maybe people don't want to call in on Addiction Podcast. Maybe I was just like really overthinking like what people would do. Oh, wait, it says there's somebody. Oh, no. This is a text that's spam. I was like, let me check the phone while I'm on here. And I checked it and nobody's called. It's fine. It's okay. It's might not be the podcast to have a phone to call in, but I'm going to keep the number there. It's 305 Joe Rang or 305. What is the phone number again? I don't even know my number. This is why people are not calling in. It's Joe Rang, Joerang. It's +1 305 Joe Rang. Give me a call, send a text, do it up. And segment wise, I've got another problem. I should bring that back. I was just thinking of doing that on my own, like just on my Instagram, but I could just do it and then flip it on there. Anyways, we have a great guest today, Dez Bishop. I met him in Las Vegas when I was doing the Comedy Cellar back in September, not that long ago, back a couple weeks ago. And he has an interesting story and a lot of good insight, and I had a great conversation with him, and I think you'll enjoy it, and I'll see you on the other side. Thanks for being here. My guest today is Dez Bishop. That's it. No intro.
Well, because you asked me, what do you want me to say? I was like, I don't care, you know?
Yeah, I met Dez recently.
He's a comedian. He's a comedian.
We worked together at the Comedy Cellar in Las Vegas, and you told Mark, the host there, you're like, I don't like intros. Don't do an intro. So
we kept the tradition going. No, that's just down to the fact that, you know, for those that don't know, which is probably the majority of you, I'm a New York comedian, but most of my career was in Ireland. And in Ireland and Europe in general, well, certainly like English-speaking Europe and even Australia, they don't do the credits thing.
Yeah.
And so much so that it's actually like not a point of mockery, but certainly there's a bit of a titter about the fact that American comedians come over and they're like, hey, can you say this? We kind of think that's like a bit ridiculous, but like it's a cultural difference. It's not ridiculous. However, I have always been uncomfortable with the credits thing. So yeah. I kind of always say, I don't care.
I'm with you. When you said that to Mark, I was like, yeah, because they're already there. Like you're at a comedy club or a
Exactly.
theater or wherever you're at, like they're
Well,
there.
especially
Yeah.
especially with the Comedy Cellar, because here's the truth. Back in the day, a lot of the comedy clubs, people were going to that comedy club, right? But these days, most comedy clubs, people are going because they know who you are. However, the Cellar still
Yeah.
has a reputation of being a destination in its own right. So basically, I'm comfortable with these people being excited to be at the Comedy Cellar and knowing that the Cellar has a standard that they only book really good acts. So
Yeah.
I feel like you already have faith that I'm good enough to be there, and that's enough for me.
Yeah. I agree with all this. So, but you can still find Des Bishop if you want to, if you don't know who he is.
I'm very Googleable,
Yeah.
because I have
DES.
DES,
DES. Yeah.
Desmond officially, but I've had a long career in Ireland, and I've done a lot of quite broad, varied things throughout my career. So if you're bored, have a Google, and it holds up. But of course, we like to talk about more personal stuff on your podcast. So
Yeah. Well, anyways, like I was saying, go to his website, dezbishop.net, Instagram, Des Bishop, Facebook, Des Bishop, TikTok, for whatever reason, Des Bishop 5. I guess there was.
because there was four before
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. And find out where he's performing and look up his credits before you go to the show. I'm not gonna tell you that at the show. Start this episode the same way I do all of them. What's your problem?
Well, my problem in relation to this, well, I guess the deeper problem is I'm always at war with myself or some sort of inner self-saboteur that I was born with. But the official problems that I had in terms of addiction, I guess, was I was a very young, I guess, originally alcoholic, and then late in my process, I found drugs just because alcohol actually used to make me quite violent. So I went pretty hard on whatever drugs I could get my hand on, but only for a short period of time because I actually haven't taken any drugs or alcohol for 30 years. But I still label myself for myself. I'm not that big into labels, but I still perceive myself to be an addict. And I I choose the abstinence option uh, more out of like one, not trusting myself, and two, just never really feeling like I've been missing out for quite a long time. So I'm a clean and sober addict, alcoholic, whatever way people like to talk about it. And for a large portion of that time, I was like a very active in recovery guy. I'm not really that active these days, but I still consider it part of my identity,
Yeah.
as a sober person.
Yeah, because people, I'm sure they've asked you this, or maybe not since it's been a long time, but people always ask me like, you still got that problem with gambling? I was like, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
had
I
that
mean,
my whole life. Yeah.
and I, and I always say, because like I've never been a big like clean time sort of promoter in the sense that I feel like it's really just the bare minimum. It's basically just like to stay in the game of trying to become a better person or certainly not destroy my life. I choose to stay clean. But it's not, after a while, to me, it's not that much of an achievement because life just throws so many curveballs and you can fuck up at life so many times. Like I've made so many mistakes in the last 30 years, some of which were like entirely preventable. So I don't like to think that just because I've maintained, abstinence from drugs and alcohol, that like I've always won. I mean, I really have made life mistakes, and obviously I've learned from them. But basically, what I mean is that the achievement of actually being clean and sober, I don't consider to be as much of an achievement as surviving or getting through or even coming to take an accountability for my mistakes. But I'm not only talking
Yeah.
about mistakes. I'm also talking about like life throws you curveballs, bereavements, illness, stuff like that. Like all those things to me are just as big, sometimes even greater achievements than just choosing to not drink or use drugs.
Oh yeah. But I mean, you have to have that foundation, I think,
I
because
think you need the
yeah,
foundation. That's why I feel
to deal
like,
with that. Yeah,
yeah, and I just feel like I find it hard enough being abstinent. Where I find life hard enough without adding that. And that for me, not for everybody, but that for me was unnecessarily dramatic all the time. The positive outcomes were so minimal and the negative outcomes were so overwhelming that life is tough enough. I don't know why I would want to add that into the mix. And for what? That's kind of what I always think to myself when I see the friends, or family, or colleagues that I can clearly see sort of struggling, and not
yeah,
not being able to realize that they could free themselves of that. But I just wonder, like, because now I almost have a rational mind about drugs and alcohol. I just wonder, what do they? I understand that the feeling that it gives them, but like, what are they thinking that it's bringing to their life at this stage when it's causing so much mayhem? But of course, it's only with hindsight that you could see that.
yeah, yeah, for sure. It's yeah, I think that same thing too. When I'm and sometimes people mistake that with people that are clean, sober, whatever, as being smuggy, or like
Well,
thinking
certainly
they're
in the
better
early
than
days,
yeah, yeah,
I think you can be, and I think I was actually. If I were to do like a full account
yeah,
of myself, like an honest assessment of who I was in my 20s, I would say there was, because I sober when I was 19. There was a part of my 20s where I was smug and a little bit know-it-all-y, uh, and judgmental. But what I will also say is I think that was a little bit of a survival mechanism of like, I needed to believe so strongly in the sort of effort that I was putting in, uh, that that sort of ego phase of thinking that I was a better person. I mean, I think that might be a little of a harsh assessment, but do you know what I mean? Like feeling like I was part of something quite special.
mm,
Uh, I think it helped me, and I'm okay with that. And I didn't really harm any of my relationships with that smugness, but I do think it exists. But I
yeah,
think I think it's all right if it's early and temporary. But I
yeah,
100% appreciate that it can be annoying.
yeah. I mean, I know people that I think it's. I mean, it depends how you temper it, like because some people are just like, well, I mean, they'll do it one of two ways. They'll like lean on it almost as like well, I was an addict then and this and that, and or well, the ones where people think, oh, I'm clean, I'm sober now, so I can be an asshole almost.
Well,
Like I
that,
just
and there's a lot of
yeah,
that. There's a
yeah,
lot of that,
yeah,
and there's a lot of performance. I mean, listen, humanity is so complicated. I always say to people that I miss the very sort of simplistic binary version I had about life, and particularly in my early recovery and my youth. I was very rigid and like very clear on what I needed to do that was good, and what was I doing when I was doing things that were bad, how they affected my life. And I just I just life I can just see, getting older, I guess, and wisdom. Life is so much more nuanced and complicated, and I miss the simple version of what I thought life was. It's almost as if
oh my
I
gosh,
kind of prefer the not knowing time, and the simplistic sort of rules I had for myself, which really helped me to think that I was doing all right, and I was, but you can't stop yourself from knowing things, and you get older and you realize you see your own flaws, you see other people's flaws, you see the good and the bad in people, you just see how life just fucking throws curveballs and how people deal with it. Some people deal with it great, some people deal with it terrible, but in the end, it just helps you to be, one, less judgmental, but two, also understand that there's no simple formula.
what kind of rules did you have? What do you
No,
mean?
just, like back in the early days of recovery, I think, particularly because I was in with a crew of guys that were like very focused on recovery. So it was basically like, am I acting out? Am I, is this something that's healthy for me or something that's bad for me? And then, I could sit down and be like, oh, I feel this way today because 2 days ago I knew that I needed to do something and I didn't do it. And now I feel this way. Uh, I mean, those are just some simple things, but
Yeah.
You know, it's hard for me to remember. I mean, we're literally going back over 20 years now, but I just know that, you know, life life was life was simpler, you know, in
Yeah.
my mind in terms of like how to get through things, you know. But I was young. I didn't understand like compromise in relationships, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was really in recovery back in those days with a lot of like recovery language of like what would be the things that I was, you know, like handing it over.
Uh,
I can't even think of them now, but just like
I know what
just
you're
sim
saying.
yeah, there was a simplicity to sort of like when I was doing something good and when I was doing something bad, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I talk way less like that now, and I've been in and out of recovery, but it's still like when the first 3, 4, 5, 6 years, it was a lot of idioms and sayings and things,
Yes.
but you need those because that you can remember them, and you're just kind of become like mantras for you to start. But yeah, now you're just like, yeah, uh,
By the way, I really believe that all that stuff was good for me.
yeah. Oh no,
I like
I don't get me wrong. That I'm saying those are
no,
all
I know,
good, but
a
yeah,
100%. But yeah, but just in case I was being misconstrued, I really believe that stuff was good for me. And I still there was a core foundation of things from that time of my life that still stick with me today. Like just an understanding of, you know, my thinking and how my thinking affects my emotions and vice versa, how then my emotions affect my thinking, and just general life maintenance stuff that, you know, really has helped me, you know.
yeah,
And I still believe to a degree that there are certain aspects of that simplicity that still stick with me, which is what I know. Because now the great thing about today is, and I always say this to people who understand recovery, is that recovery language is in the everyday lexicon of people, you know, which it wasn't when I first got clean and
yeah,
sober. In fact, we actually used to decipher ourselves and say, normal people don't have to talk this way because they can get through life without checking on themselves every day. Whereas
yeah,
we lost that luxury because for some reason we're fucked up and we can live a life not being fucked up. But, which is the great expression from NA, eternal vigilance is the price of freedom. You got to stay on top of yourself. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So, like, but the great news is that now, because of podcasts and mental health chats and all that,
Mhm.
everyone fucking talks this way. And then you realize, oh, actually, we're not fucked up because we're addicts. We're fucked up because we're human. You know, so you kind of suddenly feel like you're in bed with everybody, just
Yeah,
struggling through life, rather than feeling like we're the misfits that have our own little secret place where we talk about what we need to do to survive. Everybody's sort of surviving together. So that I think is actually a, a positive for humanity. The negativity is that everyone's fucking struggling because the world, I
yeah.
think, is getting harder to live in
That is
mentally.
that is true. I never thought about that. The language is that there's a lot of journeys and one days at a time and type, but even those kind of things where you
Yes.
wouldn't have heard those before, but now it's, on Instagram, just flip through a couple of times, you'll just have somebody like just, going through this journey of this and
Yes.
that and
A
this.
hundred
Yeah.
percent. And I also sometimes wonder because there's a lot of labels on some of the things that I was struggling with in early recovery that, I mean, the labels, I guess, existed, but there wasn't just as much general knowledge about, say, anxiety, depression, uh, catastrophizing, like all these words that exist now that like everyone
Yeah.
talks about. They didn't exist, but I was feeling them, particularly anxiety, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know if it would have been better or worse if those labels existed, but they didn't exist, and I figured out ways to get through it. I honestly,
Yeah.
my biased opinion is that it was better that the labeling wasn't around as much because I was sort of able to make sense of it for myself.
Well,
But
because that's
now,
what you went through. So of course it makes, yeah.
yes, a
Like,
hundred
That's,
percent.
that's a
That's
classic,
why I
like,
say biased. Yeah,
yeah, that's a classic thing as you get older. It was better because it was like that was bad. Like, got to go back to rotary phones.
yeah.
Which landlines. If we could just go back to landline, I was
Well,
thinking about.
Well, go
Yeah, go
ahead.
ahead. Go yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, can I make one, I guess, strong Gen X statement? I do think that every generation has their positives and negatives. But I do think that the more recent experiment, I don't even exactly know what they were doing, but I do think there is a generation that grew up with a touch less resilience. I don't think it was their fault. I'm not like judgmental, but I do think that there's certain aspects of the way people were told to deal with their emotions that I think in hindsight people will say, I don't know if that was any better. I don't know if it was worse, but I definitely think that there will be a return to somewhere in between the fucking deal with it generation, which I consider myself to be a little bit of a part of,
Uh-huh.
and the kind of constantly pay homage to all the sort of limiting language in your head and say that's okay, you know. But I'm not saying that one or the other is better, but I would say there's probably some middle ground that in the future we will find, because I have a lot of friends with kids that, in their early 20s. It does seem, and this is just anecdotal evidence, it does seem that there's a touch of less emotional resilience in that generation, which has caused, I think, a lot of struggles. But I've read and certainly observed, like I've listened to some podcasts. I don't think I'm on my own on that one. So I'm glad in a way that I came from a little bit of a less labeled and sort of slightly tougher generation in terms of dealing with my emotions.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's going to just sound like two older guys going, yeah. But I think we were in the middle ground, in my opinion, because
Okay.
generationally before then, it was just like, yeah, you beat your kids. And like,
Yes.
because I grew up where they were like, it was just around that point. I was like, hey, I don't think you should be hitting your kids, which I
All
think.
right. I missed that.
Yeah. Well, we were in. That was the gap. We were filling the gap. It was like
Yeah.
it was half and
Yes.
half. Families were like,
Yes.
hey, we're thinking about not hitting our kids now. I think that's the generation
Yes.
to the next
Yeah.
generation. You're not
Yes.
hitting your kids.
Yes.
But I do. I think that, and again, this is just going to sound like because I was part of it,
Yes.
but I just think there was a good balance in there, because there was a good balance too of even the stuff, even of the technology that we had versus that we didn't, and kind of just
Yes.
like, hey, not to be sound like I'm doing some sort of cruise ship bits. Like we used to have to watch on VCR, and let me like,
Yes. Although I'm a
but
big fan of the nostalgia bits.
yeah,
When they're done well, I really have to say I'm a big fan. I even went to see a great Scottish comic last night, Kevin Bridges, who's about to do an American tour. So he did a warm-up show last night in a New York comedy club.
I
And
know him. Yeah, yeah,
great guy. But he had some incredible material about the current state of the world, but he also had some just like top-notch nostalgia. And do you know when you hear a bit of nostalgia material that you're like, oh fuck,
yeah.
why did I think of that? And he has a bit about the excitement of being in a classroom and they wheel in the TV. And I
Oh
was
yeah,
just like, holy
yeah.
shit, that is a fucking memory I hadn't unearthed. The only bad news is they fucking wheeled in the TV for us to watch the Challenger blowing up. That's how fucking old I am. But anyway,
Yeah.
so anyway, I'm with you on the cruise ship bit, but I do also love good nostalgia bits. And more than that, TikTok knows it. TikTok sends me a lot of tell me you grew up in the 80s without telling me you grew up in the 80s. And even though I know it's super hack, I have to say, I get a real kick out of it. And I
That
get a kick
TV,
out of
by
the
the
rate.
way,
What's
I'm
that?
still thinking about the TV because you
The
just brought
wheeling in
that
the
up.
TV?
Yeah, because it's such a it's the same thing as if I bring out like a bag of treats for my dog. He'll just hear the crinkling. And he's like, all right, like I remember that in class. You're just like, what's going on here? Yeah, and then they
Yeah.
wheel it in, they go plug it in, and you're like, there was a projector too. Once in a while they do that, but
Oh yeah.
the
Oh yeah.
Challenger. Then you said the Challenger. I was like, oh, we they were bringing us outside to watch because sometimes you can see it in Florida. I grew up in
Oh,
Florida.
because you grew up in Florida. Oh
Yeah.
God.
but
Krista McAuliffe, man.
but
Oh.
but that day was cloudy, I think, or something. So you
Oh.
couldn't. And then we were watching it on TV, and then she was just like, "All right, gonna turn that off now." And
Yeah. No, we watched it. I can still remember the arc of the explosive smoke, the
well,
whole thing,
yeah,
and the two things twirled off to the side. It was terrible.
yeah, yeah.
And then
Um,
all the horrible jokes afterwards.
Although, if you're gonna die, that's gonna be. I was thinking about if when I go, I want it to be quick. So if you can afford it, that would be a really good you're like, hey, this rocket is not going to make it to space, but if it's like kind of like, get about 10 billionaires together that have incurable diseases and they want like some sort of euthanasia thing. You put them in a rocket and you're like, this will instantly kill you, but you'll be going on in a rocket. Pretty cool. So I just thought of that. I'm gonna start that as a business.
I mean, that kind of happened with the going down to see the Titanic people.
Sure. There was a kid in there though. I don't think he had.
Yeah, that was terrible. Also terrible. Anyway, that was a bit of a digression into that thing, but the relevance of it though is just in terms of how the language has changed, but that I do think that perhaps our skills are slightly better at dealing with this. Not everything, by the way, but just perhaps I could be wrong.
You know what I think about a lot, because we're talking about terms, words, lessons you learn, things like that you take. The one that always stuck with me, I don't know if it is like your ego, and being like, I feel like that's one I think about a lot, is my ego, and especially in this business too, because there's a lot of ego in being an entertainer, performer, comic, like the ego of just getting on stage and wanting to get laughs, or now like with social media, I got to get people to follow me. I got to get this. I got to sell tickets. That guy's selling more tickets. Why am I not, that kind of stuff. And so that's like one of the things I think about a lot. And that's helped me, I think. Yeah.
And I've always found that comedy is not a great career for the addict, because it basically lends itself to, focusing on others, ruminating on things, tying your well-being into the results of your career, like all these things that are just like probably not great for your like emotional health. On the flip side, obviously, it gives you a lot of excitement where perhaps most people would be concerned, oh, I'm giving up my life of drugs and alcohol, gambling, all these things that we adore. What is life going to be? I mean, comedy really plugs the hole on that, which is definitely, I think, a positive, but it also lends itself into like a deep obsession, but the ego thing, or certainly like the self-centered, like that. I definitely think if you were going to look at like the pros and cons of like AA, NA, 12-step language, like focusing on how damaging self-centeredness is, I think is a real positive, and I think it can get lost even amongst the people that are trying to like look after themselves. You can get lost in this sense of always looking inward, where a lot of times, you also have to step away from yourself, and not that I'm religious in any way, but of all the prayers, of which there's not many I care about, but the St. Francis prayer has all the make me a channel of your peace, where there's hatred, let me sow love. But the one line that always sticks with me is, it is by self-forgetting that one finds. So in other words, like for me, it's like step out of yourself, help others, make it not about you, and you will find such a deeper understanding of who you are that is perhaps not as desperate, That's stuff like that I found has helped me. Do I always follow it? No. Do I fall back down in the hole of self-obsession, needing gratification, external validation? Of course I do. I think we all, in our business, struggle with that. But it's funny because now I'm married to a comic, and so I can see my own sort of desires mirrored in another human being. And of course, I find myself saying to her, like, listen, it's all great and it's all so important, but in the end, it's meaningless. And I know that I've tried to say that to myself, but it's much easier to say it to somebody else. But the thing being, in the end, the void will only be filled temporarily. Just remember that. That like, no matter how good it feels, in the end, the need for more validation will return. It doesn't matter how much we achieve, it will return. And I'm glad of it, because it is a motivator for creativity.
How does she take that? Does she take that as you attacking her?
No. It's never. It's not in a way of like, oh, you got this great thing.
Yeah.
Let me relax that. It's more at a time of like, frustration,
Got it. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
maybe like, being overwhelmed, just a kind of a remind. I think it's always good in our business, particularly in America. And this is not, I'm not attacking America, but I promise you, if you work in the American industry and outside of the American industry, which you've definitely dipped your toe more than other American comics into like the rest of the world,
Mhm.
the bullshit level here is a lot higher. Like there's a touch more honesty from the people in the industry outside of America. But obviously, America is also more exciting. The money is higher. There's really a lot more that you can achieve here. But it's very important, particularly in the American industry, when it's coming at you, when the industry's coming at you, to keep grounded because there's so much bullshit. So I wish, honestly, at times where I had a bit of American excitement, I wish I had somebody that said to me, by the way, this is all awesome, but don't get excited until the thing is happening, because it would have saved me some disappointment because I just didn't understand that there's just so many people that are full of shit.
Yeah.
But that to me in America is like the industry standard. I've talked to so many comics, and so many European, Australian comics have experienced it, where they come from an industry that's more honest, not totally honest, but they're more honest, right?
Yeah.
So you don't get as excited about things because it's the truth is being, given to you slowly, and it tends to be closer to the truth. Whereas here, very quickly, you're getting promised the sun, moon, and the stars. And I don't even think that these people are really deliberately being dishonest. It's just the culture of the industry to be excited, be big, and there's no sort of thought of the repercussions of, most likely you're not going to be able to follow through on this. And there was just no need to say all those things, that we could have achieved the same result by just being like, hey, let's keep trying to collaborate and let's see what happens, rather than like, this thing, you have no idea how exciting this is going to be. And this is all just like
Mhm.
hypothetical exaggerations, but it is a real thing that many comics from outside the States who have gotten a bit of American heat have, experienced.
Yeah.
And that,
I know some. I'm
yeah.
friends with some, and then also I can just tell you from my experience when I have traveled over, like the first time, the honesty is almost shocking as an American. When you're like, what? Okay, like yeah,
Well, you mean I suck?
I appreciate it. You appreciate it in the end, but I was like, whoa, that was. You're almost like, whoa, that was harsh. But then in the end, you kind of look at it like, oh, it's better than here, where they're just like, yeah, 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 and then it's just
Nothing.
ghosted,
Yeah.
like just not getting back to me. Whether it be your manager, your agent, the booker at a club, whatever it is, it's just like, come on. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's
So, but
interesting.
anyway, I mean, listen, I mean, in relation to my wife, just very specifically, I mean, things have consistently gone really well for her. So it was never a case of like, oh, you know, don't get on your high horse. It was more just a case of constantly like staying in a grounded mindset of, when's the right time to truly be excited, and also when's the right time to realize that, no matter what happens, like it, like emotionally, like it's not gonna bring the healing that perhaps you think. But of course, I'm always thinking like in the addict mindset of trying to keep people. One of the big issues of my life has been the massive swings from high and low. So I'm always a big fan of just trying to temper the highs just a touch, to perhaps, keep the lows that little bit more level.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think I do that, but that's just part of my personality.
Yeah.
But I think that it's beneficial too, because otherwise you just, because I when I was gambling, I didn't do that.
Yes.
I would become manic about like things, and the wins aren't really, any gambler would tell compulsive gambler will tell you like, oh, I didn't really care about the win. It just gave me more money so I could gamble more. It wasn't like about, hey, I have money now and I can do that. But I definitely be like, wow, I'd like elevate up there. I'd be like, what's going on? You want it? But and I'd be like, you
Yes.
could, if I would have told you, like, if you would have known me when I'm gambling, you would see this fluctuation where you're like, why the fuck did he come in hot like this? Like, hey, or just like this, manic low or something. So yeah, I think that's really good advice for addicts to temper that. Yeah.
Yeah, addicts, and I think just people in our business in general. I mean, it's always good for life in general, but not everyone has the same personalities. Like I have a tendency to get like overexcited, you know? Uh,
Mhm.
I don't just mean like in a moment of like, I get a bit excited and a bit loud at a party. I mean like, for a couple of days or a couple of weeks where I'm really feeling myself. And I have no problem with people feeling themselves. I actually think it's great. I think you can actually come up with some of your best work when you're feeling yourself. But it can't become everything, you can't become overly reliant on that to feel okay. That's always my thing. It's like, hey, all this is awesome. Let's celebrate it, but not make it everything about us, because there will be a moment where it won't be there. I don't mean success wise. I just mean like it won't be bringing you the feeling. So
Yeah.
just remember to that's a Buddhist thing then. The practice of non-attachment, which I truly think is one of the great things. I'm not a great practitioner, but I do think that, the practice of non-attachment is great, because it's like, well, this feels amazing, but don't become over reliant on it for your well-being, because it will not always be there.
Well, I've practiced the art of non-attachment several times because I lost everything through gambling. So I feel like I was pretty Buddhist. Yeah. I had a house
Yeah.
and I didn't. So very
Well,
Buddhist.
we don't all need Book of Job level proportions to truly understand life, Like
Yeah.
I said to you when we met, I've always thought that gambling was the worst, because like I've got all the addictions really, except for some reason uh gambling never like took me. But I always, with gambling, everybody I've known, uh the damage is humongous, and I think it doesn't get the credit it deserves from the general public for how fucking horrible it is.
Well, because I mean, I put it this way. I've been doing this podcast since the beginning of the year. I've had one gambling addict. That's not true. I've had two. I had a guy, but he wasn't a comic, so I forgot. But I've had two out of, so we're talking about like 5% of my guests, or
Yes.
and I'm looking for them, like I want them, but they're just, I think it goes undiagnosed a lot of times with people. Like
Yeah.
they want, whether what I mean is just people aren't admitting it, or families don't know, because I say it all the time. If somebody's you know heroin addict or pills or whatever, like, they can't hide it.
Yes.
You see it. If you're an alcoholic, you see it. They're putting they're putting something in their coffee in the morning, getting
Yes.
just like. Whereas gambling, it's just like you can hide it until either it's too late and you're homeless, or you're dead, or you're gone, or
Yes.
whatever and stuff. So, um, and I've hidden it. Like I was clean for a long time, and then I went back out gambling, and I hid it from everybody. People that were at an intervention with me, like my family, friends, that and so it's I think that's part of it. Is it's really a son of, I mean, I've joked that I do about it too, obviously, but I think all addictions are, I mean, that's the one thing I've enjoyed about doing this. Enjoyed is the wrong word. One thing that's been interesting about doing this podcast and talking to other people that have addictions that I do not have is just getting a better understanding and respect for that. Did an episode with a guy, we're just talking about cigarettes the whole time, and I kind of like just was like, because I just said flippantly in an episode, yeah, cigarettes, whatever. And someone wrote to me like, cigarettes was the hardest. I was on heroin, and cigarettes are
Yeah.
harder. So
A lot of people
yeah.
say that.
So I
Well,
had a guest on.
it's also the most damaging health wise. I mean, it's a game of numbers, obviously, but
Yeah.
it is actually still to this day like the number one behavior that causes health issues.
Yeah, so many. I wanted to ask you real quick again. So you were young when you stopped. Just going back to this, you were young when you
Yes.
stopped. I'm like jealous of people. So there's the ego coming in here, but it's just like, man, I wish I would have. How do you do that? Like, because it just seems like when you're young, you would just tell yourself, whatever, I'm fine, or I can do
Yeah.
this, or I'm going to stop, but I'm going to do it in moderation or whatever. But that's,
Well,
yeah,
first of all, from our generation, it would have been hard for you. I stopped at 19. Honestly, it would have been hard for you to even know that you had a fucking problem with gambling by 19 because how the hell were you going to be gambling? You know, like back in
Right.
the day where you had to go to a bookie and all that stuff. But so for me, a couple of things specific to me were one, I started very young. I started drinking at 12. Not because I was particularly crazy or anything. I happened to be the youngest guy of like my neighborhood friends. So like growing up, I got lumped in with like the older guys, but in a great way. Like we were all great buddies, you know, playing basketball, wiffle ball, you know, like just like literally kids. And you know, they hit their adolescence before me. And like when I was 12, they were only starting to like drink and smoke weed. Like I didn't smoke weed till I was 14, but like those guys were just doing age appropriate experimentation. And I was like funny and I fit in with the group. I was one of the guys without question. Nobody was like, Dez is too young. So at 12, I started drinking with them and it was fun, you know? But the difference also between me and those guys, because none of those guys, by the way, have a problem. Every single one of these guys that I still am in great touch with, we had like a reunion barbecue during the summer. None of them had to stop drinking or, you know, they all have very healthy relationships with alcohol. Uh,
Mm.
but mine was never healthy from the get go. And it wasn't just because I was young. So, and I started to have like negative outcomes pretty early. I joke and say that I got kicked out of school at 14 because I had a problem with alcohol. It's not really true. Like my flunking out of Catholic high school was one of many symptoms of the fact that like something was not right with me, you know? Addiction, like active addiction, was also a symptom. So I don't actually think I got kicked out because I had a problem with alcohol. I got kicked out actually because I had completely tuned out of school. And on top of it, I was getting caught by my parents drinking. So that those two things together
Mm.
made them very concerned. But actually, they, you know, so for those that are listening now, I went to Ireland when I was 14 to go to boarding school after all these things had happened. So I joke and say, of all the countries to send somebody with a problem with alcohol, it's Ireland. But actually, they didn't send me per se. A cousin put the idea into my head. A cousin was visiting from Ireland, and she was like, "Why don't you go to boarding school in Ireland? It's actually not that expensive." Because my mother had been discussing boarding school, but saying that like she couldn't afford it. And then I said to my parents, "What about Ireland?" And they were like, "What?" You know, like it was like
Uh, uh,
not on the cards. But Fiona, who was my cousin, her dad and mother, like very much like took it upon themselves to like do a bit of research and just very quickly, within 6 weeks, it was organized. So it was pretty random, you know. But anyway, I did end up in an. And by the way, part of why I wanted to go was like I had fallen out with some friends. These days, it would be definitely be called bullying. You know, like a little bit of social isolation. I had this like obsessive relationship with this girl, lovely girl, who I'm still friends with to this day. Um, you know, and just like I just was not like being a healthy 14-year-old in any way, like particularly emotionally. So for me, it was like, get the fuck out of here, you know. In AA, they would call it a geographical. Of course, I wasn't aware that I was doing a geographical, but I definitely, you
yeah.
know, it was definitely part of it. But the weird thing is that for my adolescence, it was a reset that definitely helped me educationally. You know,
Mm.
I I I didn't really get back into problem drinking again. I did continue to drink, but like it definitely. Sorry, I my wife is calling me. Let me just let her. I'm doing a podcast. I'll call you back. She so it helped me educationally without a doubt, and it definitely put my sort of like the progression of the illness, quote unquote, on hold. You know, and it wasn't until I was 16 and like the Irish kids caught up to me in terms of like age appropriate drinking and doing
Mm.
drugs that it started to kick off again. And then from 16 to 19, it was like progressively worse. Anyway, that's one factor. The other factor why I got it young was because both my parents were sober alcoholics. You know, my dad was a very active recovery guy. My mother was like a dry drunk, as they say, sort of white knuckling it. But she never drank again. She made a vow to the blessed Virgin. She made a vow to Mary that if she got pregnant, she would never drink again. So getting pregnant with me was actually the end of my mother's drinking. She never drank again. And she didn't resent me for that, by the way. But anyway, so my mother's was raised by alcoholic. Like my mother had a childhood of the negative effects of alcoholism. I didn't. I had a childhood not affected by active alcoholism at all. I mean, I would argue I definitely had a childhood affected by the emotional damage that comes from, like alcoholism and its presence in the generations of my family. But I definitely did not grow up in like an alcoholic home. I never saw my parents drinking. But my mother had severe paranoia about the dangers of alcoholism. I mean, she couldn't have been more paranoid about alcohol. And from the minute she found out I was drinking young, she was drilling me that I was going to have a problem, that I didn't have a chance. My dad also, in a gentler way, was like there for me, particularly when quite young. 17 was the first time I sort of was like looking for help. All I got was like support and like I think it's a good idea. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So I was in
Yeah.
like very recovery positive house.
Yeah. You're in a good situation.
Yeah.
And that's great because could have kept going 10, 20, 30, could have died, like that would have been.
I also had a strange amount of freedom in Ireland in the sense that, yes, I was in boarding school and I would stay with my cousins, or sometimes I would stay with friends at the weekend. But like, it was just very easy for me to find ways to tell my cousins I was staying with friends and then not even really know where I was going to stay, but just like knowing that I could find the right place to go that weekend to like do some crazy shit. So I really did. And I was, there was no cell phones. Like I talked to my mother every Saturday morning, 6 a.m. Irish time. Oh, sorry, 11 a.m. Irish time, 6 a.m. New York time. I just like had a check in with my mother for like a half hour. That was it. So, I was really able to get up to a lot of shit. So I was able to sort of accelerate the behavior, So, and also don't forget, don't forget, but I haven't pointed out that from about the age of 16, don't ask me why, but in blackouts, I would get very violent, like real blackouts, like actually no memory, but fully function like violence. Never got arrested and never did any like severe damage to anybody, but that was just like not sustainable. Like, and that was really the beginning of me knowing that, like, for me, for whatever reason, genetic or otherwise, I can't drink. I've never been able to control it, and every time I get drunk, horrible shit goes down. And I lost friendships and like real negative shit happened. Long before I was 19. So it was I was lucky in a way that with the minimal amount of consumption, I knew that it was disastrous.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, no, it's great that was identified. It's not great that you were drinking at 12, but it's great that you had the thing that, your dad being sober and your mom being, you said she was a dry drunk, but still like, but still identifying that and pointing out.
Yeah, but also I feel like sometimes, because I see people that like, they really suffer for a long time, but like they really are quite functioning. And I'm kind of glad in a way. Like, I was never like, I have friends still to this day that really, I think their drinking is a problem, but like, it doesn't cause real problems in their life. And they're good company. It's not like we're all getting together and we're like, he's off on one again. No, they're funny. They're fun. And it's great, but it's just like, your liver's probably going to give in when you're 65. But, it's like, it's just in a way I feel like I was lucky that it was just so obvious.
Yeah. I have friends like that too, but I don't know. Same thing where like they drink a lot, but it seems like, they have a business, they go there.
Yeah.
It seems like the business is doing well. I mean, I don't know for a fact, but I'm just like, okay, I mean,
Yeah.
I
Like
have work friends that sometimes you're like, I guess I'm not going to say anything because it seems like, yeah, they're married. That marriage seems to be good,
yeah.
but
I mean,
yeah,
20 years ago, I would have said something. Now I absolutely don't, because you know what? I don't even care, in the sense that it doesn't affect our friendship, and like, it doesn't affect, like, when we hang, it's fine. So I just kind of go, no big deal. Not my
yeah.
problem, you know?
And I think they know too, if they had, if something was going on, they could probably approach you because they know who you are, like where you come from too. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I also have some friends. Well, I have some people that I'm closer to now that were like part of my extended friend group originally, but I'm closer to now because they decided they'd had enough, and then we bond on that. But the funny thing is that my closest friends that I see regularly today, I don't think any of them are recovery friends. I still have great friends from recovery, but they're not actually part of my like core group of, you know, the people that like I talk to every day, hang out with,
Yeah.
like shoot the shit with, you know. So like that's great too, you know.
Yeah. I don't think I do. Yeah. I think it's the same. All right. Let me ask you these questions. 8 lucky
Okay,
questions.
go for it.
Get out of here. What's a small thing someone did that helped you more than they know?
Oh, a small thing someone did that helped me more than they know. Well, there's one that comes to mind, but it's kind of like, I don't know if it's in the true essence of the question, but a guy I knew, coincidentally enough, from early recovery, uh, we were young, and he got testicular cancer, and his was really bad. Like, it spread on him, and he had like tough chemo. And I used to visit him in the hospital, and it was really my first brush with like people my own age, like thinking about their longevity. He ended up totally fine, but anyway, uh, I when in the year 2000, I had a lump on my balls, and I was kind of avoiding it, and I bumped into him. I hadn't seen him for a couple of years because I had moved up to Dublin. So I was no longer living in Cork, where we were all hanging out. So I bumped into him on the street, and I told him what I had, and I asked him what his lump was like. And I wanted him to tell me that it was like nothing like my lump, but he told
Wow.
me it was exactly the same. And because of meeting him, I actually went and got it checked. And it was testicular cancer, and it hadn't spread. And I didn't have to go through the shit that he went through. Uh, so he, I would think that's a pretty big one, you know?
Yeah. There are no wrong answers to these
Yeah,
questions.
yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
that's the one that comes to mind immediately. I mean, there's plenty others, but
That's got to be the most embarrassing of the cancers to have to tell people you have, right?
testicular, actually, no, because
Yeah.
like I like telling people, because I tell you what's embarrassing about testicular cancer, that people consider it to be the same as like so many other cancers, because testicular cancer is really like the best one to get if you're going to get a cancer. Uh, so I would say the time I was most embarrassed about testicular cancer was I got asked to host there's a charity in Ireland called Canteen, which is it's for a charity for teenagers who have cancer, and like that they can get together with people who understand, and they don't have to feel like othered by these other kids who could never comprehend what they're going through. One of the most amazing charities like ever. Very emotional. But anyway, I got asked to host, and of course I was doing my couple of jokes about testicular cancer. And all these teenagers were like coming up to me and like, identifying. And I was just like, guy, like these kids, like some of them are fucking like fighting death, and fucking bald, and really going through hell, you know? And I was just like, what I had is like, no, I had the cold compared to your fucking pneumonia. Like, please,
Wait,
just,
why is it considered the best? I'm not familiar with test. I mean, I'm familiar with what it is, but
well,
what?
in 2025, the death rate is almost zero. Now
It's very treatable.
there's
Yeah.
two types. One is more prone to traveling than others, but both of them, despite which I got the better one, but and my buddy that I met had the other one, but the either way, it takes extreme neglect to have a terrible outcome from testicular
Okay.
cancer. Because here's the thing: your balls, despite being in a sac, they're somewhat outside of your body. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So there's a little more work that the cancer needs to do to get up into those lymph nodes, and so it's an inconvenience. You lose a testicle, but it's not that like basically if you look at the stats, the only people that die from testicular cancer are marginalized groups that have terrible health outcomes in general due to lack of resources, lack of education, and lack of access.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it had something to do with it being the separation, but I do
Yeah.
need to go. I'm going to check my balls after this podcast. So.
Yeah, but here's the good news is that you're really past the age. It's really 16 to 35 is the hot zone for when you might have it. The bad news is that you're now heading towards the prostate time.
Oh, I just got that checked. I'm good.
Yeah. So that's really honestly that's your concern now is your prostate.
The worst part about getting your prostate checked is you have to drink that chemical solution to flush out your. If you had like a colonoscopy, then they put the camera.
I haven't had the colonoscopy yet. In fact,
So
when you're 50, you have to get it. So I'm actually.
I'm 52, so I've had.
Yeah, I'm 50 in November, so I'm planning on. I might get a colonoscopy in November.
So the procedure is fine. Like you pass out, you wake up, you're like, oh, you feel good for half the day.
Yeah.
But you have to drink this solution that just flushes out your entire, intestinal, like intestine and prostate and everything. And there's some chemical in to do that. So you just got to make sure you're like staying home for the night, before you run to the bath, and then you just end up like just shitting water by the end. But it's chemically, the first one you do, you're like, that's gross, but I just choked it down. By like the third or fourth one, you're like, I'm gonna vomit. But anyways, have fun with that.
I look forward to it. My brother had a colonoscopy, but I'll
the procedure's great. So yeah, it's fun. Yeah. What song best describes your addiction?
Oh, what song best describes my addiction? That's definitely one I should have thought about more beforehand. Not to give away the secrets of your podcast, but you did send me these questions.
Oh, I've just got. Well, trust me, the first time I didn't give them ahead of time, took a long time for the answer. So the people listening to this podcast are well aware of the secrets.
I mean, I think the best song about addiction is Johnny Cash's version of the 9 Inch Nails.
Oh yeah. There's no wrong answer, Saul.
No, but that I think that's the best song about addiction. But I don't think it best describes my addiction. I mean, this might be cheesy. This might be cheesy, but I think REM's "Everybody Hurts" might be the best song too.
Is that a song about addiction, or that's just
no? I'm just saying a song that describes, everybody hurts.
Yeah, I like that one too. That's a good answer. But my last guest said Chumbawamba, just so you know. I got knocked down. So, you're already above Chumbawamba.
But Johnny Cash's version of God, what the fuck is the name?
Isn't it
Hurt? Yeah. I hurt myself today because the emotion is there, but also because he's literally dying when he's singing it. You just feel a life well lived, but also a life of pain, in his voice, and I find it hard not to cry every time I hear that song. So I think that's the best
not
song.
Too long after that song.
Correct. That whole album of covers, which was incredible.
Yeah, because I remember he was going to be, not that I mark all my time by the MTV Music Awards, but I remember he was there. They were I think he won an award, an MTV Music Awards, and I remember they were interviewing people on the red carpet. I want to say it was Outkast, who I love, and they were like, "Oh, we're really excited to meet Johnny Cash." Like they're like, "Who are you excited to meet?" And they're like, "Johnny Cash." And then I don't think he showed up because he was too sick, and then he died like 2 days later or something like that. Something sad like that. R.I.P. Johnny. What's the dumbest excuse you ever told yourself to justify your addiction?
Oh, God, it's fucking so long. That's my problem. I mean, I guess it's just I deserve it. It's funny. I have a distinct memory one night because most of the end of my final year, I was in Cork. I was in college in UCC, and I was really trying to stop, and I was like failing. And on one of my benders, I distinctly remember I was drunk, but not drunk enough to have blacked out. So I remember this walk home, and I just remember talking to myself, being like, you know what, fuck this. I'm just fucking doing it. why the fuck, I'm just fucking doing it. Like, that's it. I drink and that's it. And I was like having a conversation with myself, but I wasn't saying I deserve it, but I just remember being, like being drunk and like angry and just being like, that's it. I'm fucking, this is who I am,
Yeah.
but I don't really remember like specific, excuses. I just remember moments of giving in. Like I remember one time I was at an NA meeting. I guess I think it was like either the end of 94 or the beginning of 95. And I remember I had a bottle of Pepsi under the seat and I was like 50-50 on like, fucking walk out of here and just go and get some drugs actually, or I'm gonna sit there, and I just kept like nearly getting up, and I remember fucking I fucking went. I walked out of that meeting halfway, and I went to the drug dealer's house on the Mardyke. If you happen to have any Irish listeners, a long time ago now, but I remember I left the bottle under the seat so people would think that I was just going to the bathroom and not chase me to try to stop me.
Oh, yeah. Kind of like when you're at a restaurant, you don't want them to take your food. You leave
Yeah, so I left the bottle under, so they'd be like, "Oh, he's probably just going for a piss." So like nobody chased after me, being like, "Yo, are you okay? Are you okay? There is another."
I don't think anyone would chase after you anyways, but that's how your brain works. So
Do you have another
probably,
solution? I know sometimes people fucking like a veteran might just check in on you and be like, "Is everything all right?"
Maybe. Yeah. Well, you already answered this. What do you think is the worst addiction? You said gambling. I don't know if you think it's
I really do think gambling is, because it's so insidious. It's, as you said, so easy to hide. And I feel like the end game for most people is really fucking damaging, relationships, families. I just think that you can really do a lot of damage. Now, I may think that because of the lack of awareness of it, but I also think that it's going to be a big, big issue, particularly for the younger generation, because of their access to ways to gamble and also the normalization of it. Because obviously, part of the problem with alcoholism is that alcohol is ubiquitous and it's heavily marketed, right? And now gambling is the same, and it's very normalized, and it's I mean, literally, sports people are talking about how it's affecting their lives because they feel a level of animosity that's coming from people that lose bets that didn't exist before, and I know some of that's just the way people talk on the internet, but they feel a distinct difference, particularly since the rise of sort of DraftKings and all these other things. And I did a series about addiction in Ireland back in 2012, and I did interview some gamblers, like people, in recovery. And back then, it was legal in Europe a lot long before it was here, like the internet phone gambling. Their big concern was that the crack dealer was in your pocket, and I think that has only gotten worse.
Yeah. It's I have talked about a lot on this podcast. I had an author on that wrote a book about it, and I think that's the big issue with it now is because I just asked this question because I think it's interesting to hear other addicts, because they rarely, I think one time I said their own addiction, but
right.
yeah.
Well, I have to say, I used to go to NA with a lot of heroin addicts, and I was like,
that
was a lot worse than what I experienced. But I just, there's just something about the damage that gambling can do at the end.
The phone thing is, I remember there used to be an app just when apps were first a thing, there wasn't a ton of them. So there would just be like, it was like a glass of beer and you could go like this and it would drink, you could go, blip, 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 it would drink. And I was like, but it was like, that was the whole app, I think that's the extent of drinking apps on a phone.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
what I'm saying? Like versus you could actually gamble on your phone.
No, you can gambling on the phone is very like it's so dangerous, and it's so not necessary for society and these companies. Obviously, they found their ways around it, and I do think that people will become increasingly concerned about like how prevalent it is.
Yeah. Well, I've said it before on this podcast, and I'll say it again, because I always have new listeners jumping on every week. If you have a gambling issue and it's on your phone, all of those apps are I think they're required by law. If they're not, it's the only good thing they do. Have a way to exclude yourself. You go into the settings or the account or whatever, and you can self-exclude yourself for lifetime. So you can just do that, and they are not allowed, and they will not reinstate you. So once it's just like a drop-down menu. You click it, boom, you're off that. The problem is every fucking week a new app comes up.
Yes.
It's like there's FanDuel and DraftKings, and then there's like Prize Picks and this one, that, and then you're just like, what the fuck? Like, here's $500. But you can do that, and that's the safest way to do it. So if somebody's new, it's good to know that. What one word would you use to describe your addiction?
Desperate.
Yeah. And what about your recovery?
Evolving.
Yeah. More words that people use. They've co-opted our word. Don't take our words.
Don't take our words, man.
Trad wives. Okay. What's your proudest moment in recovery so far?
Oh, my proudest moment in recovery. That's the harder one to answer.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, my proudest moment in recovery, it's more about life, but like, you know, when my dad died in 2011, but he was diagnosed with like terminal lung cancer in 2009. And, you know, he had a tough life, heavily abused by his parents. His mother went to jail for the abuse. Anyway, it's really terrible, but he was an actor and a model before I was born. He gave all that up for us. You know, he gave us a normal life. We grew up in Queens. He was a clothing store manager. He was a manager of Burberry's on 57th Street. And, you know, we just had like a normal working class Queens life. And, but it was stable and it was great. You know, it was like an idyllic childhood in terms of the life that we had, you know? So he had an audition for On Her Majesty's Secret Service to be James Bond after Sean Connery.
He was not for in place of
George Lazenby. He did one, but they were in the same modeling agency, just to give it a sense of like. Yeah. But my dad was not seriously considered. By the way, you will not see anything about my dad in the histories of James Bond other than reference to the show that I wrote about him called My Dad Was Nearly James Bond, which was really not a show about my dad nearly being James Bond. It was about the sacrifices he made for us to give us life, and how I found myself chasing a similar dream that he gave up for us. And, you know, so part of that at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival of 2010 was he would get up on stage at the end, but they wouldn't know the show was about him and they wouldn't know he was there. And then he would come out for his little encore. He'd say a line, get a laugh, and then, well, always get a standing ovation. But it was a great show and it did really well, that show. And, you know, whatever, it was a very exciting time. And he died the following February. That was August. And he died the following February. But that was a fun, great time for him, for me, for our family. And that's probably the proudest thing that I've done since I got clean. But part of why I include that in the recovery stuff is because the relationship I had with my dad was because of recovery. And we were very close because through recovery and just through like the culture of being honest and having difficult conversations, you know, we were able to do that together without any issues at all, you know, and it was really like an amazing end to his life, our relationship, everything about it was great. So I would say that.
Yeah. That's a great story. Yeah, I like that. He had to do the whole Edinburgh with you? He
didn't have to, but he did it. And then he delayed by a week. But actually, one of the regrets that I have, and probably he had before he died, was we had one more week to go and he had to go back because he had to start his chemo again. And he delayed by 1 week, but he was nervous about delaying any further. So he wasn't there for the final week. And I would just show a video of what had been on before. But after the fact, he did regret it because he did realize that like so the way it works with the cancer that he had is you do a round of chemo, it basically kills off the cancer very quickly, but it comes back very quickly. But you get a very good result from the first attack of chemo. And then eventually it comes back and you do a different chemo, but it guaranteed to not be as successful, but it will prolong your life. And I'd say if he had a chance to do it all again, he would just have stayed the extra week. It wouldn't really have made that much of a difference. And a lot of that second batch of chemo time and the time that he bought for himself wasn't as great. I mean, I don't think he would have regretted doing the second batch of chemo, but I don't think he would have thought it made that much of a difference to have delayed by a week. But that's, hindsight's 2020. And it didn't really affect the run. But I think in the end he was like, I should have just stayed.
Yeah, there's so many shitty things about any disease, but specifically cancer, and on all the decisions you have to make. But in a similar vein, end of my mom's life, like she by the time she was diagnosed to when she passed away, she lived a lot longer than they said she was going to. But the last couple of years were very difficult, and there was a very difficult surgery, basically putting a rod in her leg because her bone was going to shatter because she had a blood cancer that would affect your bones and stuff. And that was a decision she had to make. Should I get the surgery or not? And then she got the surgery and then ended up passing away about 7 months later. So the last 6-7 months of her life were just a lot of pain and misery. And so that's the thing that people don't think a lot about with cancer, but it's like these decisions you have to make, and you don't know the fucking answer. So it's like just another thing that sucks about cancer.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, if it had happened today, he would live a lot longer. There's some treatments like immunotherapy and stuff that would have prolonged his life. But I mean, we have no regrets because we had a good time at the end. And it is what it is. But yeah, I would say that was my proudest moment.
I mean, you still got to do that, even
100%.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, what's the worst advice someone gave you while you were struggling?
While I was struggling? Well, honestly, what's so funny is a friend of my dad's who was a member of AA, and it was outside of an AA meeting, Irish guy.
Oh, no.
He said to me, he was like, come on, man, you're too young to be an alcoholic. Just enjoy yourself. And the guy's in recovery.
You know what that is? It's probably him thinking like, look, I'm glad I'm in recovery, but I had some good times.
Yes. I think he was also like, I don't know, was he worried that I was being paranoid or something? Anyway, it doesn't matter. He's a good guy, by the way. I don't even actually, because my dad died, I lost a bit of touch with some of his friends. He's probably dead now too, but hopefully not. Good lad, good guy. I don't hold that against him. I just thought it was very funny.
That's hilarious. I love it. I think if I was in that same situation, I might say that to sound like maybe not again, but it's like, hey, come on, get out there and see if you're really an alcoholic or a gambler. Or whatever. Yeah. Give it a try. Lastly, what advice do you have for someone that is struggling?
Oh, I mean, I would always say, like, reach out for help, and be honest. Reach out for help and be honest. Like, it's really, when I think about the times where I was struggling, I remember this one time. So I was a doorman during the summers. I was in Ireland for school, but in the summers I'd be back in New York, and I got a job as a doorman, Chelsea, West 23rd, West 24th, London Terrace Towers. And my summer when I was 17, I was just, it was a bad summer for me. A lot of drinking, and like my head was shot. And I just remember one day I was just at the job, and you could make phone calls. And I just decided to call the AA hotline and was like, I'm struggling, And I don't think I did anything about it, but that call helped me, And I'm not saying that when you reach out, it's going to be the moment where you finally decide to get help. And I'm not even saying that that's the type of help you need. But what I am saying is, like, when you're struggling, reach out to somebody who you think can help and be honest, because trust me, if you're already fucking struggling, like, you need help. I'm not saying you need to do what I did, but you need help. Everybody needs help. So just reach out. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I would say the first 7 questions, almost, I don't have any answers that are the same ever. The last question is almost always the same answer, but I like having it there because I think that's the theme of my end of my show.
Yeah.
Like, just reach out to someone, because I don't mind it being the same answer, because I think people need to hear that. Like, just reach out to people, because that's what you got to do. That's where you start, and just find out what works for you, So,
yeah.
All right, Dez Bishop, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate you having her. Go to dezbishop.net. He's super funny comic, great dude. Check him out, see where he's gonna be at performing. You can find him on Instagram, Facebook, and don't go to any of the Dez Bishop 1, 2, 3, or 4s on TikTok. Only Dez Bishop
Yeah,
5.
only me, and
All right,
not
thanks, Dez.
the former linebacker for the Green Bay Packers.
Oh wow, I didn't even think about that.
But
Yeah,
he's Dez Bishop 55, and I have a joke about it, and he's seen it, and now we're like Instagram buddies.
that's awesome. I didn't think about
All
All
right,
right,
man. Thanks, bro.
thanks again to Dez Bishop for being on the podcast, and he made me think there at the end where he said he called the hotline. I think it was AA hotline. I never give out those numbers. I should probably give out those numbers. I always do. As always, if you're feeling suicidal, you might harm yourself, call the crisis hotline in the US 988, Canada 988. Go to Wikipedia page for a list of suicide crisis lines for all your countries, even Germany with your dumb 25 digits. 0304401067. Get out of here. But yeah, you could also call any of those hotlines. There's all sorts of different ones. There's ones that are like AA for NA, GA. All of the anonymous have hotlines. They have numbers per state. They have them by country. You can go to those websites and find out. I know there's another one like 1-800-ADMIT-IT for gambling. I always see that in casinos. Admit it. it's very not antagonistic. Just kind of like, hey, fuckhead, admit you got a problem, instead of just like, hey, call us, we'll help you. But I think it works. It's easy to remember. 1-800-ADMIT-IT. I think that's the national gambling, national problem gambling hotline. But any of these, it's like we talked about at the end of the podcast, reach out to somebody. So it doesn't have to be like you're in crisis or suicide mode, and that's for these. If you need help, all of these 12-step kind of meetings, they have hotlines. You don't have to call them if you don't want to. There's resources out there for you. We have Google now, so just Google like, I have a drinking problem. Who should I call? And it'll have some numbers up there, and you can reach out. And it's like we said at the end of the podcast, Dez and I were talking. Find what works for you. You might call a person and be like, I don't like this person. I really like therapy. And I'm a big proponent of it. And we had Aaron Gilbert on a couple episodes ago. And sometimes people are like, I don't like therapy because they went one time. It's like, I can't tell you how many times I went and saw a therapist. And I was like, yeah, I'm good. I mean, I usually give it like 2 sessions. I'm just like, this isn't going to work. Same thing for recovery and addiction. Find out what works for you, but just keep calling out, reaching out to people, and eventually you'll find something that sticks and that works. Anyways, I will talk to you guys next week. Love y'all.